All right, let's just dive right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack a truly remarkable piece of authentic early Islamic history. Today, we're looking at the story of a man whose life is literally a masterclass in conviction and resilience. We're going to explore the unwavering faith of an absolutely phenomenal early Muslim hero, Khalid ibn Sa'id. May Allah be pleased with him. We've got some incredibly powerful historical sources to synthesize today, so let's really visualize the massive emotional and physical journey he went through.
But before we actually look at the historical timeline, I want you to ask yourself a question. Seriously, think about this for a second. What would you leave behind for the truth? If standing by your deepest convictions meant losing absolutely everything you currently hold dear, could you do it? Keep this question in the back of your mind as we go through this explainer, because this isn't just some hypothetical thought experiment. For the man we're discussing today, this was a stark, unavoidable reality.
Section 1. Night falls over Makkah, a world of idols.
To really get why Khalid's story is so massive, we kind of have to set the stage first. Just imagine Makkah at night in this ancient era. It's a society deeply steeped in tradition where idol worship totally dominates both the culture and the economy. Picture a young man walking toward the Kaaba, surrounded by the physical statues of idols that his entire society reveres. You see, before many of the great leaders and notable figures of the time had even considered embracing Islam, this one noble man made a choice to leave everything behind for the truth. He didn't wait for a crowd. He didn't wait until it was popular or safe. Khalid ibn Sa'id stood completely alone in a society that was fundamentally opposed to his new beliefs.
Which brings us to Section 2, a father's bitter rejection, the price of belief.
When you make a massive shift in a highly traditional society, right, there's gonna be a collision. And for Khalid, that collision happened right inside his own home. Because making this kind of shift brings immediate danger, he had to act really deliberately. First, he hears the message of Islam, and it just resonates deeply with him. But because of that hostile environment we just talked about, he has to secretly meet the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He literally has to hide his interest just to protect himself. And it's during this secret meeting that he takes the monumental step and accepts the faith. The secrecy here is key. It really highlights the immense peril of what he was doing behind closed doors.
You see, Khalid wasn't just some guy. He was Makkah nobility. He had family, massive wealth, and immense status in Makkah. He had a very comfortable, highly privileged life. But by choosing Islam, he actively traded that luxurious comfort for exile and intense hardship. This wasn't just some passive consequence that happened to him. This was an active, conscious trade-off he made for the truth. He was prioritizing eternal salvation over his worldly luxury.
And the reality of that trade-off, it hit him immediately and brutally. The sources tell us that his own father became absolutely furious upon learning of Khalid's faith. His father rejected him completely, cut off all of Khalid's wealth, and violently forced his own son out of his home. I want to just pause here for a second so we can fully absorb this. This right here is the very beginning of Khalid's journey from Makkah into exile. To be forced out onto the streets of Makkah meant suddenly having zero tribal protection, no income, and no shelter in one of the most unforgiving desert climates on Earth. In an instant, a wealthy nobleman is stripped of absolutely everything. Yet despite this complete financial and emotional ruin, the historical record is crystal clear. He never abandoned Islam.
All right, Section 3, Migration and Supreme Sacrifice, Leaving Makkah Behind.
With his dad basically rendering him homeless and totally vulnerable in a hostile city, Khalid's journey into exile really kicks into high gear. He had to take immense physical action to protect his beliefs. This migration meant leaving his home in Makkah, gathering whatever meager belongings he could physically carry, and crossing the sea to Abyssinia. And here's a pretty wild historical fact to put things into perspective. Crossing the Red Sea in the 7th century was incredibly treacherous. These were small, perilous vessels navigating super unpredictable waters just to reach an unknown Christian kingdom on the African continent. Imagine these early Muslims at the shoreline, looking back at Makkah, the only home they had ever known, and stepping into these tiny boats, heading into total, dangerous uncertainty.
Standing on that shoreline, look at what he's leaving behind. He left the ease of a nobleman's comfort. He severed deeply ingrained tribal and familial bonds, entirely shattered by his father's fury. And he completely erased his recognized elevated status in Meccan society. The texts explicitly state that Khalid sacrificed all of these things, deliberately choosing Allah over his worldly life.
Let's move to Section 4, the legacy of unwavering faith, courage, and sincerity.
Because you gotta wonder, what happens when you lose absolutely everything? Do you become bitter? Do you just give up? Well, for Khalid, His exile from Makkah was a crucible that forged an incredible life arc. From those terrifying secret meetings back in Makkah, to the devastating rejection and loss of his home, to crossing the treacherous sea to Abyssinia, it all culminated in a lifelong service to the Ummah, the global Muslim community. His story didn't end with exile. His exile was literally just the foundation that built a lifetime of fierce dedication.
Picture him in his later years, standing among Muslim soldiers, marching under the rising sun. Even as his face fades toward the horizon of history, the message is super clear. Khalid ibn Sa'id remained fiercely loyal to Islam until the very end of his life. He served the Muslim community